All right, a couple more examples. Number 22. So all these negative exponents. So since I'm adding here, I can't just flip this to the top. So I'm going to just uh, simplify the numerator first, simplify the denominator, and then I can divide. Okay. So because we know the numerator and denominator are have their own grouping symbols, right? So in terms of order of operations, we'll do that first. So 4 to the negative 1 power is 1 over 4, right? 2 to the negative first power is 1/2. 4 to the negative first, like we just said, is 1/4. So then we can combine. We did 1/2 plus 1/4 a little bit ago. We got 3/4, right? So we know we can multiply this by 2 on top and bottom, get 2/4. So this will turn into 3/4 on the bottom. And on top we have 1/4. And then when we divide fractions, we can multiply the numerator by the reciprocal of the denominator, right? So flip that guy and multiply, or change, flip. And so here 4's will cancel out, and we'll end up with 1/3. Okay. All right, let's take a look at 28. So here, we'll deal with the exponents first, then we'll add and subtract in the numerator and denominator, and then we'll divide. So on top I have 3 plus 1 over 2. On the bottom I have 1 minus 1 over 2 squared, right? And so I'm going to evaluate that a little further. So on top, I'll just leave this for now, 3 plus 1/2. On the bottom, 1 minus 1/4, right? 2 squared is a 4th, turns out. All right, so 3 plus 1/2. So I could convert 3 to 3 over 1. And then I can get a common denominator by multiplying by 2. So that would be 6/2 plus 1/2, which would be 7/2. And then on the bottom, I can think of this as 1 over 1, multiply by 4 on top and bottom. So that becomes 4 over 4 minus 1/4. So that would equal 3/4. So my numerator fraction is 7/2. My denominator fraction is 3/4. So then I can, once again, keep, change, flip, or flip that guy and multiply, right? And so now I can reduce 4 over 2, reduces to 2 over 1. I can multiply the top. 7 multiplied by 2 is 14. 1 by 3 on the bottom is 3. So we get 14/3. All right, so now let's just kind of incorporate all of our exponent skills and negative exponents. So number 32, here we have a situation where we're multiplying like bases, right? And so what do we do with the exponents? Product rule, we add them. So we're going to end up with 1y, right? 1 base. And then we're going to add the exponents, -3 plus 5, until we get +2. So that's our answer, right? So here's a situation where when we check off our boxes, 1 of each base. So we started with 2 y's, now we end up with a 1y, right? We have positive exponents. We don't have any constants here, so there's nothing to simplify there, but so we're done simplifying in that case. 34. Here I'm multiplying 3 y's together, right? Same thing, I'm going to add the exponents. So this one's a little tricky because I only see one exponent. But remember, there's an invisible 1 here, an invisible 1 here. So when I add the exponents, I'm going to add 1 plus -8 plus 1. And so that would be -6. So we're not done here because we have a negative exponent. So we're going to change the position of the base, and that will change the sign of the exponent to positive. So in other words, we drop it, and that's how we end up with a simplified answer with a positive exponent. All right, number 36. W to the negative 8 times W to the negative third. So we can add the exponents. Negative 8 plus negative 3 is negative 11. We can drop it like it's hot. So we end up with 1 over W to the 11th. All right. 38. So here we're multiplying. We have 5 multiplied by negative 6. So we're not adding those, right? Those are just constants. And so we just do what we normally would. We just multiply. 5 by negative 6 would be negative 30. All right. And now we can address the y's. So those are like bases, so we can combine them together and add the exponents. So 5 plus negative 7, that would be negative 2. And so we don't want to end up with a negative exponent, so we're going to drop it. So it becomes negative 30 on top. So this stays, right? Remember, it has its own invisible exponent of 1. So the negative 2 doesn't affect the 30. It just affects the y. So the y is going to go to the bottom. Its exponent will become positive. The negative 30 remains on top. All right. All right, so number 40. So here we're dividing bases. So q to the 5th divided by q to the 7th. When we divide bases, we can subtract the exponents. So we're going to subtract 5 minus 7. And we get negative 2. All right, and then since we have a negative exponent, we're going to drop it. So it'll be 1 over q squared. All right, number 42. So we have negative 2 over negative 8. We can reduce that. So 2 is a common factor there. 2 divided by 2 is 1. Negative 8 divided by 2 is negative 4. So we'll end up with 1 on top and negative 4 on the bottom. Or I'll just put the negative in front of the fraction here. All right, I'm going to leave the 1 out on top for now, unless there's nothing else there, right? Then I'll put the 1. Otherwise, it can be invisible. So with the m's, I'm going to subtract. So 13 minus 17 is negative 4. So I have m to the negative 4th over 4, but I have a negative exponent, so I want to drop it. So I'm going to end up with negative 4m to the 4th on the bottom, but what's going to be on top? So here's where if there's nothing else on top, always make sure you put a 1, right? So 1 can remain invisible unless there's nothing else there on top, then you need it. All right, now, some of you might be wondering, well, couldn't I just bring the m's to the bottom and subtract 17 minus 13 to begin with? And you can definitely do that. So that's something we can talk about a little bit more in class. But if you notice that, that's definitely a shortcut you can use. If you didn't notice that, then don't worry about it, or you can rewind, but we'll talk about it a little bit in class. All right, and then number 44. I'll let you try that one out. But remember, we're going to subtract the exponents because we're dividing. Okay? And then make sure you end up with a positive exponent. All right, and I'll do 46. So negative 22 divided by negative 11. So that equals 2. negative divided by negative is a positive, so it'll be positive 2 on top. And then the w's, since those are like bases, I'm going to subtract the exponents. So it'll be negative 4 minus negative 3. So when I subtract a negative, I'm going to end up with negative 1 there. And since I have a negative exponent, I'm going to drop it. So remember, the 2 remains. It's going to stay where it is on top, but the w is going to go to the bottom. And there's an invisible 1 there, but I'm going to leave it out.